have a look at how to solve a quadratic inequality. For example, x squared minus x minus 6 is more than 0. If we factorize this quadratic inequality, you have x minus 3 and x plus 2 being more than 0. Now, let's assume that this inequality is actually an equal to sign. If it's equal to sign, then we will have x to be equal to 3 or x to be negative 2. So we expect our final answer to be an inequality, not an equal to sign. But let's look at the shape of this equation. We know that if y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, whenever you take any quadratic equation, any parabola, if a is positive, we expect it to have a minimum turning point, a U shape. But if a is negative, we expect it to have like an N shape, a maximum turning point. If you look at this quadratic here, it has a minimum turning point. It's in the shape of a U. So we expect it to have this shape. And this is when x is equal, this is when the function is 0 on the x-axis. So we got negative 2 and 3. So which part of the curve is positive? Because this expression must be positive. Of course, all the portion of the curve above the y-axis is positive. All the portion of the curve below the x-axis is negative. So in this case, this expression is more than 0. So we expect this portion of the curve to be positive, and this portion of the curve to be also positive, because the y component of this curve is positive. The curve is of the form y equals f of x. So y is positive in this section. Now, if y is positive, if the curve is positive, only this section below the curve is not part of it. Only the portion of the curve above the x-axis is part of it. If we look here, this section, all the values of x for this section is more than 3, because from here we're going to 4, 5, 6, all these numbers are more than 3. If we come to this section of the curve, all the values of x of this section is less than negative 2, because we have negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, and so on. All these values are less than negative 2. So we have x is less than negative 2. Therefore, the actual solution is x is less than negative 2, or x is more than 3. And that is the final answer. Let's look at the same inequality, but in this case, the sign is changed. Instead of greater than, it's less than. So we know that if we solve this equation, it's the same procedure. So when we factorize, we got x minus 3, x plus 2 less than 0. If we, let's say, in case it was equal to, we will have x equals 3 or x equals negative 2 if this was an equal to sign. But it is not an equal to, it's an inequality. So we do not expect our answer to be equal to. We expect it to be an inequality. Let's sketch the graph and see. If we sketch this, we know, of course, there's the same approach, right? It's supposed to be something like this with negative 2 and 3. But in this case, the part of the curve which is less than 0 is when the y is negative. Y is only negative of this portion of the curve. Y is negative of this portion of the curve. This portion, which is above the x-axis, is not part of the curve. It's not part of the portion which is negative. This portion is not part of this range because it's positive. It's not negative. So only the part in red is negative, is below the x-axis, because y is negative in all this region. And we can see clearly that when the curve is negative, if it's less than 0, then the value of x is between -2 and 3. So the value of x is between -2 and 3. And that is the solution. Let's take another example. Clean space. If we have the curve -x² minus x plus 30 is more or equal to 0, and the same curve -s² minus x plus 30 is less or equal to 0. If we factorize this, we have 5 minus x plus 6 is more or equal to 0. If you don't know how to factorize, please check out the next video on factorization. If this was supposed to be equal to, in case it was equal to, we have x to be 5 or x to be -6, because 5 minus x will be 0 or x plus 6 will be 0. Now, let's look at the shape of this curve. If this is the y-axis and this is the x-axis intersecting at 0, this curve, the coefficient of s² is negative. So we expect it to have a maximum turning point. Let's say the shape is something like this. So it may be wrong, but let's say it's correct, okay? We expect this to be -6 because x is -6 and x is 5. Because here the curve is y equals f of x and f of x is 0, right? So we're talking about the x-axis. The y is 0. So x is -6 and x is 5. Of course, this 5 and -6 are on the x-axis. Now, this is greater than or equal to 0. So we're talking about the portion of the curve which is at least 0. And that would definitely be the region above the x-axis. We're talking about this region. This region. The part above the x-axis. Of course, the part below the x-axis is negative. Because here, y is 0 or positive. So this curve must be 0 or positive. And we can see clearly that the values of x when this curve is positive for this region is from -6 and 5 together, from -6 to 5. So clearly the solution will be -6 is less to x and 5. X is between -6 and 5. X is greater than or equal to -6, less or equal to 5, as we can see from the inequality. It includes 0. If we come here, is the same approach. If we factorize this, it's 5 minus x plus 6, less or equal to 0. In case it was equal to, we will have x equals 5 or x equals -6. This parabola is the same as this parabola, so the graph is the same. Anyway, this is just a rough sketch. It's not exactly correct. I'm just using it to illustrate the inequality. So if this is y, we got -6 and -5. Remember, this may not be the turning point, okay? I'm not interested in turning point. I'm just interested in where it crosses the x-axis. So the graph may be wrong, okay? So if x is less or equal to 0, we're talking about a portion which is 0 or negative. And this is the portion of the graph which is 0 or negative. The portion of the graph which is 0 or negative. Okay? So we can see clearly that if x is less than -6, this portion of the graph is x is less or equal to -6, because all the values towards the left of -6 are less than 6, like -7, -8, and so on. So this portion of the graph is x is less or equal to -6. This portion of the graph, remember, is moving to the right of 5. All the numbers to the right of 5 are more, like 6, 7, 8. So its x is more or equal to 5. So the solution becomes x is less or equal to -6, or x is more or equal to +5. And that is the solution. All right. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. See you.